Hey guys, for today's post, we're going to take a look at the most common reasons why we see PD pump seals fail, and we're going to do it by playing a game. We're going to play the Family Feud version of why do Waukesha PD pump seals fail, and why do we have issues with them in the field, and then what do we do about it? Most importantly, how do we fix them and how do we resolve them? So as we've talked about quite a bit at Triplex, we do a lot of pump audits, and one of the things that we see is we see a ton of Waukesha PD pumps. So we estimate that we've surveyed over 1,000 pumps. And what do you think are the top 8 reasons for decreased Waukesha PD pump seal life? So we'll start by talking about the top 8 reasons for decreased Waukesha PD pump mechanical seal or O-ring seal life. First, we have dry run. So running dry is probably the most common reason why we see a PD pump run dry. If we're running a single seal, either a single O-ring or a single mechanical seal, we absolutely cannot run that dry. The way that these seals work is that they need a lubricating fluid to help dissipate heat. In the absence of that, we're going to see an excessive amount of friction build up. Seals are going to rip apart, fail, and product's going to leak. There are a couple of things that we can do, and we'll talk a little bit more about in our next reasons for why we see pump seals fail to help mitigate this if you're going to be in an application where you may run dry intermittently, but we'll get to that. Next reason we have is damaged shaft. So when the shafts, one thing we see a lot is people call us and they'll say, hey, we put in a new seal, and we're starting to see failure of our seals quicker than we expected or quicker than it used to be. Usually what will happen is we'll come out, we'll pick up the pump, we'll bring it back to our shop, we'll take a look at things and try to evaluate and repair for it. And both in the Universal 1, Universal 2, and Universal 3, we'll have a shaft O-ring, okay? And if there is damage to that groove on the shaft, what we can see is we can start to see those shaft O-rings rip up or fail or tear upon installation shortly after use, just because of damage done to the shaft through the course of regular use and normal wear and tear. So damaged shaft is going to be probably the second reason, and one of the less common ones that people don't always think about, but that's definitely something you want to take a look at if you're finding leakage past the O-rings on the seal faces for sure. Next reason, hot abrasive fluids. So we've talked a lot about different posts, strategies that we use to help get longer seal life when we're pumping hot abrasive fluids. But the best way to avoid a seal failure is to specify things correctly on the front end. So if we know that we're pumping a hot abrasive fluid, there are certain considerations that we're going to want to make. We've put up a number of other posts about what the right elastomers are, what the right seal materials are for those kind of applications, and we also will talk about it some more in our next reasons. Reason number 4 for why we see reduced pump seal life: products that take a set or products that set with air. This is something that we see especially often after a long weekend. Maybe people shut the pump down. They're in a hurry to get out of there, just like we are. I'll probably be in a hurry to get out of here today. It's a beautiful hot summer day in Chicago, and I may forget to clean out my PD pump, or I may cut a couple of corners and not get the pump all the way clean. And when product is allowed to sit and accumulate on the seal faces and harden, when you go to restart, you're going to over torque those seals and you see chipping, cracking, just premature failure. So generally when we see people running sticky abrasive fluids, the most common time for them to fail is after a long period where things set. There's also the nature of a mechanical seal is that you got 2 rotating seal faces. That creates a very low pressure zone that's going to draw fluid into it to help. That's actually what's creating our seal. And if we have a product that sets with that air in that low pressure zone, that is going to create a problem. And as product accumulates on those seals faces, it's unable to seal, and you're going to start to see leakage. When we have products like that, there are kind of a couple of things that we like to keep in mind that we can use. One of them is knife seals, but we can also use a high pressure barrier fluid. So that's where we're going to pressurize the outside higher than the inside. We're actually going to potentially have product entering into the product chamber, but we are not going to have air on that seal face. And when we avoid that, then we can avoid some premature seal failure. Next reason, one of the most common reasons why we have people burning up seals. No flush on a double seal. Whether you run a double mechanical or a double mechanical or a double O-ring seal on a U1 or a U3, you have to use a flush, and that flush has to be set up properly. You wouldn't believe the number of times I remember one call we got one time. It was a brand new PD pump assembly, and the customer called up and said, "Hey, the motor's smoking." I said, "Smoking? The motor is smoking." I said, "Is it hot?" "No, but there's smoke coming out of it, and I don't know where it comes from." So we went out there, we took a look at it, and it was sold with a double mechanical seal. And the first thing that I said was, "Where's your flush line?" Because they didn't have the flush on that outer seal. When that happens, things get really hot, and a carbon seal will actually smoke. This customer just didn't know where, he couldn't differentiate between the motor and the pump, but it was pretty clear once we saw it. So if you're running a double seal, you have to make sure you have a flush. There's a lot of things we can do, and we'll talk about this probably in a future video about best practices for piping a double flush. But just know, whether it's double O-ring or double mechanical, you're gonna want it. You have to have a flush on that seal. And when you have that, to our original point, for dry run, you can actually run dry. Well, we don't recommend it. You can run dry, at least intermittently, as long as you're using a flush. So keep that in mind for any sort of double seal applications or an application where you may run dry. Next, wrong elastomers. So the elastomer seal in a single O-ring seal, that's all you got. You just have a elastomer or an O-ring that's forming your seal. And obviously, if we don't choose the right material, if we use EPDM with an oil-based product, or maybe use Buna in a really high temperature application, we're going to see a reduced seal life. Even in a single mechanical seal, we have shaft O-rings that play an integral part in sealing. We have inner seal O-rings that play an integral part in sealing. If those elastomers start to fail or fail prematurely, it's going to lead to our pump seal failing quicker than it should. So that's where we talk about, with hot abrasive fluids, setting it up on the front end right, having the right seal materials, the right elastomers, so that we can optimize for that application. Next, we have cavitation. So cavitation is when we have, basically, it's when the net inlet pressure available in the system falls below the net inlet pressure required of the pump. We see this for really hot fluids. So without going too far down a rabbit hole, every fluid has a vapor pressure, and that vapor pressure changes at a different temperature. For instance, the vapor pressure of water at, let's say, room temperature is about 212 degrees. If we increase the temperature of the water, the vapor pressure of that fluid will change. When we get below the vapor pressure of the fluid, it will go from a liquid to a gas. So we have liquid entering the pump, a low pressure zone at the inlet of the pump. A Waukesha PD pump will create a low pressure zone at the inlet. It will suck a little bit. We're not recommending doing a whole bunch of dry lift, but it will create a little bit of suction. And when that happens, there's the potential for that liquid to go from a liquid to a gas. Within the expanding and collapsing cavities of the pump chamber, we repressurize that, now gas, and we make it a liquid again. That phase change, anytime you have a phase change, something going from a liquid to a gas or a liquid to a solid, you are either putting in or releasing a lot of energy. In cavitation, we are releasing a lot of energy when we're compressing that fluid and it's going from a gas into a liquid. That energy has to go somewhere, and where it goes is it damages our pump, specifically our mechanical seals. So we'll start hearing things like, when pumps are cavitating, we'll hear things chatter. We're more prone to shaft deflection, premature bearing failure. All sorts of bad things start to happen when we cavitate a pump, and that is going to reduce pump seal life. We just touched on it. Our last reason for premature pump failure: bad bearings. When our bearings are loose, and we can check this is one of the first things we check when we go to evaluate a pump. We did a post on this, how to evaluate a Waukesha PD pump for repair in about 5 minutes. Basically, you want to pull the pump off, and even before you pull the body off, you can turn the shaft. It should turn. That's the quick check to know if you have a pump that's working well Or if you want to check to see if you put it back together again the right way, you just turn that shaft because it should turn, okay? If it's not turning, obviously your bearings aren't good. But then the second thing we want to check is for play in the bearing, and that's where we use a good firm 10, 15-pound handshake and just check for any shaft deflection either on the drive shaft or the short shaft of the pump. If we're seeing drive deflection, shaft deflection, that obviously is going to impact our seal life. Our mechanical seals are riding on a shaft. Ultimately, they, by name, are a shaft seal. And if our shafts are deflecting, then we're going to see those seals aren't going to ride right. You're going to have uneven wear, and you're going to have premature failure. So that's it. Those are our top 8 reasons, Family Feud style, for why we see reduced seal life in PD pumps, or why we have problems with mechanical or O-ring seals in walk-shop PD pumps or any sanitary pump. So we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions, as always, contact a Triplex sales engineer today. You can reach us via email or through the phones, and we hope everyone has a great weekend and it doesn't get too hot for you guys. Thanks. Take care.